We're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking about architecture and architectural drafting, a little bit of a dry subject. And just a little forenote, even though both of our panelists, both of our speakers are from Outhouse, this is not an advertisement for Outhouse. This is meant to be informative and educational more so than just an advertisement for us. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started, and let's go ahead and introduce our speakers. For now, we're going to have Stuart and Darren joining us. Stuart is our president, or technically, I guess his term is partner at Outhouse. And Darren Kieser is our VP of Operations. Stuart, could you do a little self-introduction, please?
Yep, sure. Yeah, managing partner. But and at first, I want to say I'm a little insulted that you call drafting a dry subject. You're going to pay for that one. But yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of Outhouse. My background is mostly in CAD and residential architecture. I was born and raised here in Phoenix, and that's where Outhouse is headquartered. We've got around 40 employees, with most of them actually working remotely across the country in a lot of different states. Our CAD services here is the largest department in the number of employees, and probably I'd say over the last 20 plus years we've been doing this. The number of homes built from Outhouse drafted plans probably numbers into the tens of thousands. We've planted our homes, our plans a lot of places.
Darren, how about you?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I'm originally from the Midwest, born and raised in Nebraska. So I've been in the home building industry about 25 years, which is a little scary to say. Been working with Stuart since 2000, so 22 years we've been working together. So most of that time in CAD, been managing some of the other services too, but really my passion's in the CAD department.
So being Nebraska born, I'm sure you're either a Jayhawks or a Wheat Shockers fan.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. Just checking. You never know. You never know. Who knows? I was confused by the fact that you wear red shirts almost every day, today in a blue. It threw me off. I was thinking maybe you were Jayhawks or something. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about architectural drafting. We're going to separate this out into 3 phases. We've got basically the design phase. We've got the meat and the potatoes of the drafting phase. And then we also have, once you're done with those plans, in addition to being able to build with them, converting them over to marketing collateral. Before I get started, I just want to point out 2 little bits of housekeeping. If you have any questions whatsoever, I want you to drop it into the chat panel, not the questions panel, but into the chat panel. If you put it in there, I'm not going to stop for it, but I will keep a tab on it, and we will get those questions answered and addressed before we're done today. And then when we're done, we'll be giving away a few door prizes. Many of you know my heart is in giving out the big deal pen. We'll be giving out a couple of retro 51 pens today. And we'll be doing those based on some quick draw questions at the very end. I feel that's really the best way to do it. So anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. When you're talking about design, I'm gonna point this one towards Stuart. When you're talking about design, and when a builder is looking for design, not everybody is Toll Brothers where they have a 25 drafter team that builds and drafts all their plans for them. What does a smaller, or maybe even a less sophisticated, or even a new builder do to garner and attach themselves to get those designs that they need to have?
Yeah, good question. And I would say that really kind of fits into almost my philosophy of business since the very beginning, which is to hire the right people for the right job. Not only as the employees that you hire for your team, but in regards to the vendors that you're going to contract and hire to do work for you that you may outsource. We've always kind of preached that architects, they went to school to learn how to do the creative side of design. That's what their passion is more of in regards to, is creating some beautiful homes that work well and flow well in design. So we say, hire the architects for what they do best, which is that design side of things. And then, look at the other services like CAD services who do what they do best, which is, 100% of their focus is in creating the best construction documents that you're going to find. We've often found that The CAD services can often be a little, since that's their main focus, they are a little more progressive in regards to keeping up with the technology of CAD and the graphic quality and stuff. And in the same way you can hire an architect to do your renderings for you, or do your engineering for you. They even often outsource that anyway because they know that's not what they do best themselves. So yeah, architects do what they do best, hire them for what they do. Everything else, might be worth looking outside what they do to get that done.
So with that being said, when you're talking about an architect versus like a common drafter, there's got to be a cost savings there too. I mean, I guess it would be like going to the dentist to have him do a hygiene or a teeth cleaning for you. His hourly rate is definitely more than hygienist hourly rate. Is that the same thing with an architect versus a drafter?
Yeah, you're very often going to find that the CAD services, they aren't architectural firms, so they often aren't going to charge the architect prices for the drafting. And you can ask an architect, if you have them itemize what their costs are for design and drafting and rendering and whatever, they very often are going to be a little to a lot more marked up than you would pay by going separately.
All right, so let's look at the concept of what kind of programs are out there. Darren, you are upon receipt of all the different plans that builders send to you once they're through the design phase when they want to transfer that over to marketing collateral. But there's a lot of platforms when a builder starts up and they want to do this in house. There's AutoCAD, there's Revit, there's Chief Architect, there's SoftPlan. I mean, there's a myriad of different programs out there. Do you have any guidance or input as to where you'd want to settle in on that?
Yeah, and that's one thing with all the different programs that are out there. I mean, there's definitely a place for all of them. The Revit and Chief Architect, some of those pure BIM platforms are incredible programs. For commercial, for high rises, stuff like that have big teams working on them. For home builders, we still haven't found anything better than just the original AutoCAD. So most people use it. Most people can import into their program. So if it's specialty programs, they always import DWG. So AutoCAD is really the place to start for home builders, for simpler structures that are going to be used for a long time.
And when you're talking about BIM, I mean, realistically, a lot of that was created. Matter of fact, Revit will, Autodesk, who makes AutoCAD and Revit, will even admit that that was originally designed for commercial use. So the various properties, the various attributes, engineering, plumbing, electrical, could all flow into the same file format versus being handed off each segment of the job. But on that same note, they also had a letter that they sent out apologizing to a group of architects around the country for the fact that they haven't fully developed Revit and almost stopped any kind of development in Revit. So I know that we've run into this where when a builder has option plans, are you finding that an option plan issue that Revit maybe isn't quite the option to go with versus an AutoCAD?
Yeah, very much. And I mean, I've seen Revit files that have multiple elevations, all the options in there, but the amount of time it takes to create that, I mean, we converted over in about 2007 or 8. We decided we were going to go 100% Revit. The first project or two, we realized we were spending literally 4 or 5 times the amount of time drawing a set of plans. So again, if you're working on a high rise where you have teams and you have the structural and mechanical, the collision detection, all of that stuff is incredible. For home builders that are usually sending it to a outside, structural consultant or MEP, if everything isn't done in Revit, you're not getting a whole lot of benefit from it.
Yeah, and I would say too, there are home builders that are successfully using Revit. However, I was just talking to one of my friends at a big national builder who they have a kind of a hybrid of some of the regions use AutoCAD, some use Revit. And he said himself on the Revit side to kind of temper your expectations that some of the costs of using Revit may outweigh the benefits. One of the things he said was that Revit users trained in residential architecture are very hard to come by compared to AutoCAD users. They're everywhere. Like Darren said, the Revit models do take a lot longer, and the builders are able to afford that when they have that in-house to take a little longer time and money to do so. And like you said too, there's when people hear BIM and Revit, they think, press of a button, I can get my material and quantity takeoffs. I can do the collision detection and stuff. And that just isn't the case. And that's usually because most of the MEP and structural engineers, they don't use Revit. So now they're finding that, okay, that the architectural model is built in Revit. You've got a great 3D model of that. But once it goes outside of that, since the other contractors aren't using it to do their work, you lose the collision detection, you lose the material takeoffs and stuff. So he's happy with it. He's a fan of it, but he basically says, know what you're getting into.
So with that being said, would you assume, and this is probably more for Darren, would you assume that there is an integration delay when you're looking at the various BIM products, and the fact that when you go to structural, if they are AutoCAD, they're having to work almost not necessarily backwards, but having to reverse engineer before they can even do their job?
Yeah, they can. I mean, all these programs do export, and it's funny, they all export to the AutoCAD native format, and that's for a reason, because every program, whether it's a truss manufacturer and their very specialized software, or structural engineers, they can all import DWGs. So, I don't know if they're really working backwards, but some of the exports can be very hard to work with. I mean, we see that on our marketing side. I can tell you in about 10 seconds if it's an export from Revit, because there's a whole bunch of extra lines and the layers don't make sense. So it is more difficult even for creating a marketing material. So I would imagine a truss manufacturer or structural engineer that has all the extra line work would be more difficult. And ultimately, if it's more difficult, they're going to charge the builder more money to work on their projects.
Right. So let's look at another aspect of this. So kind of backing up to the different ways you can get your designs. And you got architects, you have designers. Literally anybody can be called a designer. Anybody. If you sketch on a piece of paper a floor plan, you're a designer. So an architect, which is a degreed, occupation, designer. You've got the ability to copy from other builders if you want to. We'll talk about that a little later, so don't go into that one right now. And as well as all the myriad of the different .com companies that have plans out there. What are your thoughts on those, Darren?
I mean, I think, you can get designs from anywhere and get your inspiration from anywhere. I like the architects or the designers that are trained designers, because they're, especially if you're building a series of plans, they know how to make things, flow and work together. The .coms, you can get good inspiration, but there's going to be a lot of plan development, once you take that to a drafting company. So, an architect that gives you either a CAD file or even, gives PDFs and signs off on that design, they're usually, pretty rock solid plans. You don't start, even if we draw them from scratch, we don't find 4-foot bathrooms and stuff like that, like you might in some other places. So, it really depends on how much time you want to spend on the design development. If you want to get a plan that you can turn over to a drafting company and just go, a good designer or architect is going to be the direction.
Well, what I find hilarious, and this is literally hilarious, is that I'm just a sales monkey. I'm not a drafter. I'm not an architect. I have zero clue how any of that stuff functions. I don't want to know. Matter of fact, Darren won't even let me touch any of the computer programs that have to do with drafting. However, when I can spot on those .com pages that an elevation doesn't match a floor plan, that's alarming, because there's not a lot of vetting that goes into those .com plans. You don't know who that designer is. In some cases, they'll list if it comes from a certain architect, or if it was from a design studio. But a lot of times they're just a generic floor plan and elevation. And a lot of times, again, like I said, they don't match up. Plus, they haven't been designed and developed So you're having to basically take that concept, if you will, and then jump through all the hoops to get it done. Now, let's go into the actual drafting phase then. So we've already talked about how you can do it in-house, like have a drafting team, hire some drafters. You can outsource it to companies like ours or some of the other companies that do what we do, or even, Carl working out of his home in his underwear. They're out there, and are they usable? Sure. Can they scale? Probably not. Stuart, what are your thoughts on those various uh, in-house, outhouse options?
Uh, yeah, it really does come down to the builder and what their expectations and requirements are for a final product. I've kind of found that the closer you are to the east or west coast, the more complex and more detailed the construction documents and the drafting has to be, and that's usually dictated by the building departments themselves. Sometimes the builders they too want to see a little more detail in things, but uh, yeah, when you get closer to the middle, that's when you find some of these builders who can do a set of construction documents on, as little as 3 or 4 sheets of paper. But that exact same home in somewhere off of Los Angeles, California, may be 40 sheets, with all of the detail and work that goes into that. And I'd say, Carl in his underwear, and I'm going to pick on Nebraska because Darren's here. Carl in his underwear, working out of his garage, can maybe do that work for you. Even in those areas, a little more rural like that, the construction documents that are drafted, you take those to the contractors who are actually going to build the home, and the plumber and the electrician, they don't even look at their sheet. They throw it out and they just build it the way they want to, and then to get away with that because the inspector comes out and well, it doesn't match the plan, but it works. Pass. It's harder to get away with that the further you get to the coast. So you're going to see a lot more of the more professional, bigger firms, and costs is associated with that. The bigger the cities are, and more complex and strict the building departments are.
What's funny is when I first interviewed with Stuart, I worked for a custom builder in Omaha, and I told him I could do every sheet start to finish in 20 hours, and I wasn't lying. And he sat me down with the first production builder plan set, and I was like, whoa, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Like I couldn't even draw roof plans. So, I was able to kind of self-teach myself and fake my way through it for a little while. But, I was doing $1, $2, $3 million houses in Omaha, Nebraska, which is a really, really nice house. And it was 5, 6 sheets, and the last 2 were the same on every plan I ever submitted for 2 years. So I thought I knew what I was doing until I, got here and saw how it was really done.
Well, Darren, that brings up a point because based on your state, your municipality, the laws in your own states, the size or scale and level of detail of your plans can vary. Like I know in Arizona, you have to submit master sets that have to be, structurally stamped. But there's other areas of the company where they don't need an architectural stamp, they don't need a structural stamp. They just do the method of getting sign off from, the different various code enforcers. So what are your thoughts on why some plans cost $6,000-$7,000 and some plans cost $1,500-$2,000?
I mean, it's really is based on complexity. When we quote projects, we're literally looking at going, hey, do we think this is going to take 70 or 80 hours to draw, or is it 150 hours? Some of those complexity are what you said. If we have to draw interior elevations and 2 or 3 or 4 sections. And again, when you get to the middle of the country, you can do one kind of wall section and it works for every plan instead of doing whole house sections, every 20 or 30 feet. The other thing that really affects it is the options. So since we do kind of specialize in standard plans, the more complicated your options are, the more time it's going to take to draw, the more complicated set you're going to have. If you have attached RV garages that are integrated into a roof. I mean, that changes the roof on all the elevations and any options that are in that same, general area. So you end up drawing a lot of elevations when you start doing house expansions or RV garages. So, it really is based on, some of it's the complexity of what needs to be provided, and a lot of it is, number of elevations, number of major options. The interior options we don't care all that much about; those don't take a ton of time. But the exterior ones definitely do.
I should probably change my verbiage because it could probably be taken negatively by some. But I know that when we draft internally for our builders, that drafting a 1,500 square foot home is very similar to drafting a 2,500 square foot home. So I refer to the per square foot drafting fee as a scam, because in all reality, 1,000 versus 2,000 square feet, why should you be paying double or more for that 2,000 square foot home? But can you address just a little bit about how pricing can vary, in addition to what you just spoke on, but more on the like what complexities certain states have versus the others? And I know that's
I mean,
but
it is a lot, and a lot of it, is actually in the details. So some of the, smaller builders, stuff like that. I mean, we're not really providing any details, which kind of amazes me. The municipalities never ask, for any connections. I mean, if they have a structural engineer, they would have those connection details. But it's a little scary to me that some of the plans we're doing these days, there isn't a structural engineer. Usually goes to a truss manufacturer, but for the foundations and stuff like that, it's, somebody in that builder giving us footing sizes and, things like that. But yeah, so if somebody wants interior elevations and all those sections, and they need, custom details, that's what takes a lot of time. So, and the additional options. So that's the biggest variation. Obviously, we use keynotes. Oftentimes in Arizona, maybe we'll have 80 to 100 keynotes. If we're in Texas, we might have 12 because they don't need everything called out. So, and all those things take time. So it can be, half the time to draw a house in Texas versus Arizona.
Anecdotally, just a small story on that. Stuart and I had just come back from a summit, and while we were at the airport, we met up with. We just happened to sit in an area where there was another builder, and he asked us, "Hey, well, man, so what do you guys charge for your drafting?" And we kind of gave an idea. We gave him a range of what a typical plan could cost, and he was like, "Oof." So he gives us this ridiculous number back. Here's what I'm typically paying. I mean, it was almost obscene how low this was. And then we said, "Well, do you have a sample?" He goes, "Yeah, I got one right here in my briefcase." He pulls it out. It was 3 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. One had it was like a title sheet. The second sheet was literally nothing more than a floor plan. And the third sheet was just the elevations of the home. That was it. And that's what he called plans. So by definition of what you are required to turn in your state could vary from one builder to another, or from one state to another, and that can vary that pricing differentiation. So when you are quoting out to get your CAD, make sure that you send a sample file of what you're accustomed to working with. Therefore, you can get a pretty much a very accurate quote back as to what it would cost for that company to work for you. Stuart, you have anything to add on that? Because it was pretty alarming, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was funny. I think they were 11. I'll give them a little credit. They were 11 by 17s, not 8.5 by 11s. But yeah, that's pretty much how it was.
So Nick has a question here. Nicholas, sorry. Do builders who utilize our services, your services, Outhouse, then get CDs stamped by their own architect on completion, i.e. in a state that mandates stamped master set or submissions? Or is Outhouse capable of that service start to finish with an architect on staff?
Yeah, for the architectural sheets that Outhouse provides, we don't do the structural engineering. Structural engineering almost always requires an engineer's seal in almost every municipality in every state. So the architectural sheets, the floor plans, elevations, roof plans, and stuff that we typically do, the electrical and some as long as it's under 400 amps, I think, and then even the plumbing, those don't require any kind of seal or stamp by an architect. So yeah, like I said in the beginning, we've done thousands of plans that have been built tens of thousands of times, and we've never had a seal on any of them. That's countrywide.
But I think what he's asking though is there is some areas like in California, some areas of California, you have to have an architect stamp. And typically we would work with an architect in that area. So, I mean, we know a few architects around here, but it's not required here. They may not be licensed in those states. So, you know, oftentimes we can work with them, show them progress steps to make sure they are comfortable with, you know, us knowing what we're doing. And then they would do a final review and seal those.
It's almost advantageous. It actually is advantageous for you to work with an architect in your area, not only for liability, but just because they know all the codes that need to be enforced in that zone. Whereas just a generic architect from another state might not be, that could even be licensed there, might not know all the rules and requirements that are required. So like, you know, in New York, they're gonna have snow load. In California, they have seismic. They've got shear for wind velocity hurricane that has to be stamped in you know, along the whole coastal region. So all those things have to come into play. So I hope that answered your question. So no, our plans are not stamped. We coordinate with your either structural or architect of choice, and then they stamp your plans. Okay, perfect.
No.
All right. When considering accuracy, you know, because I know that scalability is an issue that, you know, if you use Carl, we're just going to keep calling him Carl in his underwear. So Carl in his underwear, you know, if you're a builder that's only doing 5-6 plans a year, Carl can probably handle that. But what is that magic number that a builder will exceed their capabilities to be able to keep up with quality, accurate work? And I know that can vary based on the level of detail in the CAD, but what would you think on that, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. And it is if people are drawing master sets or, you know, lot specifics, you know, they don't maintain master sets. You know, I would think most guys could, you know, do a couple, you know, 1 or 2 plans a month, maybe 3 plans a month if they're just doing lot specifics and kind of chugging along. You know, you start maintaining more than 10 or 15, you know, even 20 master sets. And then, you know, if it is an area that does lot specifics as well, that would be very difficult for, you know, one person to keep up with. So, you know, if you are working with Carl, you better hope you're their only client.
Yes. And then what about accuracy? Do you run into problems where, you know, you personally, have you run into problems with accuracy of the CAD when you're having to convert those into marketing collateral per se?
Yes, oftentimes. It's, you know, the majority, I mean, we run into things where the elevations are, you know, a couple of feet off of the floor plan, which is incredible. More often it's roof plans not matching elevations, you know, stuff like that is very difficult. And especially the way that we build renderings, you know, we build them off of the plans using, you know, building from the ground up. So using the roof plan, stuff like that. We don't project from elevations. So if roof plans don't line up, then our renderings aren't going to line up and you're going to have, you know, roofs sticking out in the middle of nowhere. So it is difficult. And then, you know, even on floor plans, if, you know, you start talking about interactive floor plans, if the option doesn't match, you know, you go to put a den in place of a bedroom and it's a foot bigger, you know, that's kind of a big problem.
And we see that a lot.
And when we don't do the drafting, if we're doing the renderings or interactive floor plans or virtual reality or whatever, we have to have the CAD files sent to us. And over the years, decades, we have seen virtually every kind of CAD nightmare you can imagine. But I think every year someone still surprises us with something we haven't seen yet. And it's not just Carl.
Nope.
It's some of the big firms too that the way they draft. That's the funny part is I've never met a single architect, drafter, designer that uses the same drafting standards as another one. So when we get something different, or when we get any CAD file from any company, it's different every time that we have to figure out. It can be a real headache.
And to expound on that, I'm a sales guy. I never turn down a sale. Never. And I might get some kickback from Darren, but I never turn down a sale. And we had a home builder, I'm not going to mention their name, but a luxury home builder that builds, you know, 10, 20, $30 million mansions. And one of their homes was so expansive that they actually chose to split the CAD file in half. They made some amendments and some adjustments to one side, made a couple of adjustments to the other side, and then they wanted us to produce a rendering for them. I'm like, fantastic, I'd be more than happy to. Well, Darren told me after a little while, after the team looked at it and says, we can't do this. And I said, why not? He goes, well, it's not accurate. I'm like, well, it's a rendering. We surely can make that happen. And then he sends me a screen share that showed that the roof plan wasn't 6 inches off. It was 6 feet off from matching up with the home. So and you can't just fill in 6 feet of gap. That's not at our discretion to do that. So when I pushed it back on the builder, they were like, oh, well, just fill it in with brick or whatever. And we're like, it doesn't work like that. And I said, we're going to have to just turn this down. And I said, so how do you guys fix that in the field? And he goes, or how do you guys build the home if it has a 6 foot gap? He goes, oh, it's just a field fix. I don't think a field fix of 6 foot gap is something I want to pay for on a $20+ million home. But anyway, that's a long-winded little story there, but it was kind of funny. So let's go into the when we're talking about the accuracy and we're talking about pinpointing this stuff and converting files. When we're looking at that, what are some of the benefits of nice, accurate, clean files when you're going to get renderings done or interactive floor plans done?
Yeah, look, everything starts with the CAD files. Honestly, it's you build the house you physically build your homes using the construction documents, the CAD files. Well, the renderings are physically built from those CAD files too. The interactive floor plans are built from those. Virtual reality, your marketing material, your digital floor plans, your printed floor plans, that all comes from the CAD. And when you have mistakes in the CAD, that bleeds into everything. Now you have mistakes in your renderings, you have mistakes in everything that I just listed. And then, the nightmare continues when you buy a new piece of land and you roll those plans and materials over into the next community. It's just like a virus that just spreads across. So the importance of accurate CAD files, I can't stress that enough.
So Darren, I'm going to point this one to you. So when we have clients that we build interactive floor plans for from their master files, so if they have, let's just call it 10 options. Bob Schultz actually has a very famous quote that I like to utilize as often as humanly possible, that there's 3 kinds of builders. You have production builders. On the other end of the scale, you have custom builders. And right there, smack dab in the middle, you have semi-profit builders. And why does he say that it's a semi-profit builder instead of a semi-custom builder? Because what winds up happening is that they're catering to those custom nuances, but they're competing against those production builders. So any of those added details and efforts that have to take place come out of their bucket of cash versus charging the client appropriately for those added services. So when you're talking about a client that has an interactive floor plan and they save an iteration, how can that speed up the process on doing lot specifics when they're if they have that master set and they have those 10 options and they have a plan they want to build and on lot B, some homeowners lot, and they want to use these 6 options. How fast can that be converted into a set of construction documents? Weeks?
No, it's hours. If there is a standard, master set. When we kind of first started doing those, I suppose it was 10, 12 years ago when we kind of started getting out of the Arizona market. So, the Arizona market doesn't require lot specifics, but we got to other places and they couldn't do master set. So that's when we kind of built our template, and it's evolved over the years, but it seems to work very well. That, it's anywhere from 2, 3, 4 hours if it's mostly interior options and stuff like that, up to maybe 8 or 10 hours to take a master set and produce a set of construction documents for a lot specific, as opposed to rolling it over, marking it up, and then kind of reinventing the wheel every time. You're probably going to spend 25, 30, up to 50 hours. Again, it depends on what kind of things you're changing. If you're changing a bunch of exterior walls where you're affecting the sections and the elevations and all of that, but really having that master set to create lot specifics from, our goal is really kind of 3 to 6 hours, unless you have custom things in there, which the kind of the builders you were talking about, it really complicates it when, you know, half their stuff is custom, and, you know, you might spend 15 hours on it if that's the case. But doing it up front is much easier, and, you know, it's easier to sell. It's easier for the builder to price accurately, get it engineered. You know, they get it to the city much faster. So, you know, there's a lot of savings there that personally I think would be worth it.
Well, here in Arizona, we have a builder, Marikay, now known as Tri-Point Homes, Tri-Point, Arizona. They're notorious for on their website, they have things called flex plans. And their flex plans are our interactive floor plan. And what they do is they utilize, let's say it has 50 options. If you, as a consumer, are buying one of those plans with one of those 50 options, or any myriad or any choice of those 50 options, your pricing is set based off of a catalog pricing arrangement. Then if you go, well, you know, I'd like to have, instead of these 3 windows, I'd like to have a great big picture window here. And I'd like to have this staircase moved over, you know, 5 feet so I can accommodate a water closet underneath it, whatever it would be. They will customize it after that, and then they charge accordingly. So that would be my best recommendation for a lot of builders that are out there, because that is an underutilized revenue source of taking those predetermined, pre-engineered options and utilizing to your advantage in your pricing structure, and then bumping up for that customization.
And I think from what I've heard talking to builders, that's where their profit margin is. You know, a lot of builders don't make, you know, a lot of money if you go in there and buy the standard floor plan with the A elevation, no upgrades. They're making a very low profit margin. But you know, you start changing a den to a bedroom, which honestly doesn't cost that much money for the builder, but they'll, you know, charge you several $1,000s to do that, or you know, some of their other even interior options. That's where they can really make some money. You know, besides the upgrades, but those small pre-built options, and utilizing, you know, again, it's not a commercial, but some kind of interactive floor plan to show that to the buyer. You know, I think that's a huge thing that, you know, most people have, but it's surprising how many people don't have that yet, to show that to their buyers. Even though semi-custom builders, you know, it doesn't take a ton of work to create the interactive floor plans.
Stuart, I run into this all the time. I run into builders, mostly in the Midwest for some reason, almost in that central portion of the United States, where builders are afraid to put their floor plans on their website. They think that another builder is going to steal it and build it and undercut them in pricing, which they don't even know their pricing. So I don't think I do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, 10 to 15 years ago, this was an even bigger issue for builders, and I'm seeing less of that now, but it's still pretty prevalent. What I would like to educate builders on is that the plan that you're going to have designed this year, let's say you're going to have a 35-foot wide series of homes, and you know, one of them is going to be 2,300 square feet, and single story, and affordable to build and sell. Pretty much guarantee that house has already been designed before, years ago. You know, probably 5 years ago that house was already designed. 10 years ago it was designed again before that. You know, if you look back at the 80s and 90s, that home that you had designed today is 95% of what was designed once back in the 80s and 90s. The biggest difference being is that that older plan has a bunch of glass block windows, and it's, remember the big deep recessed entertainment walls with the pot shells on top. And then you look at the 2000s, it's the same plan. Those pot shelves and entertainment walls are going away, and now you're seeing more. It really, the things that change are the design elements and the exterior elevations, but the actual plan layout and flow and the rooms and stuff, that all remains the same. You know, in the 2000s, you're seeing more arched walkways and soffitted ceilings. They're going from 8-foot ceilings to 9-foot, and then, you know, 5 years after that, they're going from 9-foot to 10-foot, which I'm a fan of. I'm 6'7", so the higher the ceiling, the better. But yeah, I kind of feel like builders are wasting a ton of money every era that goes by, where they're essentially paying an architect to design something from scratch, which really, whatever they come up with, there's only so many ways you can design a 35-foot wide, 2,300 square foot single story home. It kind of reminds me back there was I don't know who, but somebody quoted back in the 60s, somebody said, everything there is to be invented has already been invented. There's nothing more to invent. Well, obviously that's not true, but sometimes I feel like these homes, there's only so many ways you can have a good layout for these specific sizes. It feels like there really aren't any more new ways unless you're custom. That's a different story. But for the production home builder, whatever you can come up with now, if you know how to look for it, you can probably find it already designed from years back.
Being that we have a few architects in our audience, I just want to make sure that I use the lawyer speak. Stuart, in no way meant to offend or piss off any of you in attendance. No, but it really does come down to it. When you're talking about a simple, like a starter home, 30 wide, not that let's go by 30 by 50. So we're only talking about 1,500 square foot home. There's only so many ways you can divide that home, and that brings me up to another point. Copying a builder's plans. There used to be a large number of lawsuits in the courts based off of this builder copied my plans, or this poacher copied my plan, and now they're building it exactly the same. And those were won. Well, they're starting to lose a lot of those because there is no intellectual property on general design. If it has a garage, the garage has to be either in the front or the back of the house. If it has a front door, it's going to be in the front of the house. You have to have your bedrooms in one location. You have your plumbing attached to a kitchen in a bathroom. Those kind of design elements are fixed. So there's really only subtleties that change. So Darren, I know because I've had deals pushed back on me that we've had people come to you and they hand you a brochure of XYZ builders and they want us to copy this. How does that work out?
For us, at Outhouse and me personally, and it does drive Kevin crazy at times, but I don't show anybody else's plan. I'm not going to take a builder, even if we didn't draw it, and steal their plan. I think that's just kind of an integrity thing. And, you may be able to get Carl to do that, but somebody spent money on the architect or spent money, even design developing it themselves. And, that's not what we do. We protect everybody's property, even though it is funny, kind of what Stuart said, we've done, 30, 40 foot wide series of plans. And if we would actually open them side by side, there's going to be a whole lot of similarities between them, because sometimes they come from the same designer. I go, didn't I just see this a few weeks ago? But that's something that we really pride ourselves on, is not sharing any plans, whether they're live on their website or if it's something that coming up next spring. I'm not going to show it or even talk about it either way. So because that's some of the smaller builders are going, well, don't you just have a 40-foot wide plan that'll fit on this lot?
I get asked
Kevin asks me that all the time, and I go, well, we probably do, but I don't own it. That's another thing I guess we haven't really mentioned is if I think pretty much any drafter, but especially if we draft it for you, the builder owns the files, the design, the plans, everything in terms of the CAD side of it. So if you want to take your ball and go away, they're your files. We're going to give them to you. So which is very much a different thing between the way that architects work, and most of them own the design, they give the builder a right to build it in that certain community X number of times.
And isn't it true that you can literally use anything for inspiration? And that's what why a lot of these lawsuits keep getting lost in the courts, is because you could go into a Frank Lloyd Wright home and literally take down even dimensions and layouts and add that to your overall design, and you're not going to get sued by the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's very likely. From what I've been understand, the lawsuits that come up about copying somebody else's plans, they not only have to prove that it's a direct copy of the actual plan, the layout itself, but the ones that are won, they almost have to prove that the same CAD files were stolen. But it's not just the design of the house. That's actually because there are so many. It's so hard to be able to, what's that line of, somebody says it has to be different by 10% to not be copyrighted, or to not be considered a copy. Well, what do you call 10%? That's really hard to quantify. So yeah, unless they stole the CAD files, and you can actually see that the notes are verbatim and in the exact same spots between the one construction document set to another, you know, you're not going to make it's a moot point anymore.
I still love it when a builder's builder sends us a set of plans and they're like, yeah, this is the plans we want to use. Can you title block this and make it ours? And we're like, we drafted those plans. They're not yours.
Yeah.
You don't have the rights to do that. We know the builder that we drafted those for.
Yep.
Well,
and that's what we do. Yeah, we make you go get permission from them.
Yes.
We've had a lot of people, and they, and sometimes they legitimately buy it, buy the property with the plans. We're like, all right, we'll just, get us a letter from the builder that says you own these plans, and we'll let you have them all day.
And there are some pop-ups as of late. I know BPP is one of them, where it's more of a cooperative of plans. So you can contribute plans to it, you can purchase plans from it, and it's a radically reduced cost. But then your plans that you contribute to it, you can actually monetize those same plans. So that's coming up. I know they're going to be releasing their website here soon, in I think Q1, Q2 of 2023. But that's another avenue of adapting and acquiring plans for builds. You can buy them in series, etc. So Darren, do you have any last thoughts for our audience?
No, I think we pretty well covered it. I think, yeah. I'm gonna say no, because otherwise I'm just gonna sit here and ramble on.
Stuart, do you have any last thoughts or advice for our builders that are in tenants, or our architects? I see a few of them in there.
Yeah, the advice I'm going to give, I kind of mentioned it earlier, is don't underestimate the value of your construction documents and your CAD files. Most importantly, they are what you use to build your home, but they are the foundation of all of your other assets and marketing assets beyond that, with the renderings and stuff. So if you're going to put time and resources into any aspect of your design all the way through marketing, sales and marketing, put it into getting good, solid CAD construction documents. If you do, I promise you, 80% of the headaches that you're going to experience in the marketing and selling and even building your home, they're going to go away.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, let's get some door prizes out of the way. All right, get your typing fingers ready. Here's what we're going to do. In the comments section, I need you to type the answer to this. What is and the first answer wins. Not the first answer, the first correct answer wins. What is the most prevalent program utilized for drafting plans in the single family housing industry? Boom, Tracy Finley, you have just won a Retro 51 pen. I'll contact you afterwards via email to get the address you want to go to. All right, our second pen is going to go to typing the name of our two guests today. First person that types them in there. We have two guests. Type it in there properly. Spelling does count.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Oh, complete names. Nicholas Pearsley. Man, that was more than I was even asking for. So you get extra points for that. Not an extra pen, just more points. All right. Well, everybody, we do appreciate you. Just keep your eyes out there on all the socials. We usually advertise our digital marketing podcast that myself and Greg Bray host and co-host with each other. We also do periodical webinars that we'll post out there on the LinkedIn and Facebook social media. So we'd love to have you attend future events, and we appreciate your time here today. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.